It was a cold morning in Soweto, the kind of morning that numbs your fingers and makes you pull your tattered sweater closer to your body. But for Asenda, a little Zulu girl of just 12, this cold wasn't the worst of her worries. She stood outside the gates of her school, staring at the faded sign that read Sikambuzo Primary, feeling the weight of everything her family was going through. Today wasn't like the others. Today, her mother had told her, "Asenda, we can't afford to pay for your school anymore." Those words had hit her harder than the cold. She was the youngest of 4 children, and education had always seemed like a luxury. But for her, it wasn't just a dream, it was the only way out. Out of the cramped, tin roof shack they called home. Out of the endless poverty that held her family in its tight grip. Asenda wanted more, and she believed education was the key. She clutched the school bag tightly, refusing to let go. The school bell rang, and her classmates rushed past her, laughing and chatting as if life was simple. But for Asenda, life had always been a battle. I remember that day clearly because I was a teacher. Mr. Benzi, I had seen many students come and go, but there was something different about Asenda. She had a fierce determination in her eyes, something rare for a child her age. She approached me hesitantly after school, her small hands shaking as she held out a note. "I need to talk to you, sir," she said softly. I took the note and read it. It was from her mother, explaining how their financial situation had worsened and they could no longer afford the school fees. I felt a pang of sadness for the little girl standing before me, who was about to have her dreams shattered. "What can I do, sir?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to finish school. I want to go to university one day." There was a long silence between us. I could feel her desperation, her fear. I wanted to help, but I knew the school's hands were tied. Without fees, she couldn't continue. "Asenda," I began, "sometimes life doesn't give us what we want." But before I could finish, she cut me off, her voice growing louder, more urgent. "Please, sir, I'll do anything. I can help around the school, clean classrooms, run errands, anything. I just need to stay in school." Her words hung in the air like a plea for survival. I looked into her eyes, seeing not just a child but someone with a fire burning inside her, a fire that wouldn't go out easily. I promised to speak to the principal and see if something could be done. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Asenda. Her determination, her willingness to fight against the odds, reminded me of my own journey through life. The next day, I spoke to the principal, and after some convincing, he agreed to let her stay, on the condition that she worked part-time cleaning classrooms to cover some of the costs. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than nothing. When I told Asenda the news, her face lit up like I had just given her the world. Little did we know, this was just the beginning of a much tougher battle. Months passed, and Asenda worked harder than any child her age should have to. She would arrive at school before anyone else, sweeping classrooms and washing blackboards. After school, while her friends ran off to play, she stayed behind, scrubbing floors and picking up trash. Her hands, once soft, became rough. Her back hunched from carrying the weight of her chores, but she never complained. Her family situation, however, worsened. Her father, who worked as a laborer, was injured at a construction site and could no longer provide for them. Her mother, a domestic worker, struggled to make ends meet. There were days when there wasn't enough food on the table, and sometimes, Asenda would come to school with nothing in her stomach, but still, she pressed on. I remember one day when she fainted during class. She had been working late into the night, helping her mother clean houses after school. I rushed to her side as the other children gathered around, murmuring in concern. "Asenda," I called, shaking her gently. She stirred, her eyelids fluttering open, and looked up at me with exhausted eyes. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. "I didn't eat today." My heart broke in that moment. Here was a child, so full of potential, yet burdened by the harsh realities of life. After that, I started bringing extra food to school, sneaking it into her lunch bag when she wasn't looking. I couldn't bear to see her suffer like that. But even with all the hardships, Asenda's grades didn't falter. In fact, she excelled. She was at the top of her class, always eager to learn, always raising her hand with questions that even I, as her teacher, found challenging. Her dream of going to university was still alive, but I could see the toll it was taking on her. Her family, on the other hand, wasn't as supportive. Her older brothers had dropped out of school long ago, turning to petty crime to survive. They didn't understand why Asanda was so determined to continue her education. "You should quit and help more," they would say, mocking her for wasting her time with books. But Asanda never let their words get to her. She knew what she wanted, and she wasn't going to let anyone stand in her way. One evening, as she sat under the dim light of a candle, struggling to finish her homework, her brothers barged in. I only know this because Asanda confided in me the next day, tears brimming in her eyes as she recalled the event. "They ripped my books, sir," she said, her voice trembling. "They said I'm wasting my time." I could see the hurt in her eyes, the frustration of trying to balance her dreams with the crushing weight of her circumstances. But I also saw something else: resilience. Asanda wasn't going to give up, no matter how much was thrown her way.